Hello, Bill Maher. It's nothing personal. Where and how you were blaming our founders for slavery, they had the high rolls countering. And everyone keeps making the same physical delusions and or simultaneously relevant criminally foreign influence fact-keeping nature qualities, aspects, and natures regarding the Bible. It's wrong what you said about the Bible, too. You said all parts of everyone has roles with slavery. The first part of the Bible, the Old Testament, they're preventing anyone from speaking about, or they'll attach that person to fake words. Otherwise, we would have figured this out a long time ago. It says right there, all you have to understand is right to here, right up to here. See this, the messengers of modern religions knew that locations, areas, and states, roles with the sciences were all already abridged, as abridged constitution nature, as criminal insidiousness nature, like wrongdoing itself, predicate acts itself, as acts themselves, insidious natures. I'm not a lawyer, not a police form, not a criminal. Lawyers have been roles with the federal evidences, crimes at locations, and with the only counters to that. Since founding, see witch trials, even if they made that up, because they're still making things up with it. Self-value too, and physical delusions when that's not true, and or they attach that person to fake words. Because revelations come from that, where and how witch trials had been assigned and are still assigned to other meanings than our founders left us to communicate. Our founders left us to communicate how they had to hide their roles countering slavery. They had the force that was still left entrenched since before they were born, North and South colonies. They had to force it, counter-extort the other founders, let alone the people still entrenched North and South with slavery and with the crazy laws against anyone who was going to speak up against, or anyone who heard someone speaking up against such outside of context. You're supposed to be there to hurt them. You know, these were for subjects treatments that are going to leave out exceptions in exception nature. So this is a science that built self-valued roles with syntactical conjunctions to our words, to our value, to our nature, to our time treatments, to our substantial treatments that have been prevented free speech originally instilled. Worse than extortion is on a whole bunch of people at once. And now the police forms and the other branch of the government had and have roles with this as victim predators relative to where and to how our founders had to hide roles with it by entertaining language that they did not want to entertain. They told us to get the Constitution unabridged and to get and they communicated to have Marbury versus Madison interpreted other than it was and is interpreted. So they have people pretending, but the motivations too. In other words, it's just about comedy. That's not comedy. And in the YouTube short, I put the link. You knock someone for clapping. See, we have seriousness kept stupid and immature. I mean, I know you're a victim because you came through the schools that had other things other than ourselves blamed. Otherwise, they attach that person to fake words. Because little kids in first, second grade, third grade have means to understand and to explain that and how these are not our means, nor what, in other words. No one naturally wanted roles with slavery. You have to be a slave and sickly distinctly to be part of that. And if you weren't part of that, in other words, they tactically denatured the suburbs before our founders were even born. They designed them with slavery entrenched northern colonies, and southern colonies. Our founders left us to communicate about this relative to the witch trials spot right next to where George Washington had to counter-extort and leave roles with the witch trial spot in slavery, North and South America, and force them to help us ways that helped us win the last battle of the Revolutionary War. So they used counter remotely the countries individually grouped and together the same way they were and still are being used remotely by the breaching method from semi-ancient times, where the sciences became abridged demonstrably, way more probably than what they claim to be probable or practical. We have to examine, as actually recorded, complete remote possession of all investigators, of all formal fact-keeping nature reception, because of the uses of all locations, originally and still. Since before cars, we're going to switch to electric now before we fix the tech. We'll never be able to afford it. Wealth has not afforded out of since before cars, before our founders were even born, that rat trap with slavery, North and South colonies, designed the suburbs. It's using it effectively, designed the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, effectively employed to be blamed on other things, others, ourselves, and that to be self-defended and that propagated while being self-cultivated. And so we have remote uses of that was also for what everyone missed, juxtaposed with that, because it uses of every identity, every location. This is how identity works. So we have them making fake exceptions and exception nature, leaving out the value of exception. In other words, our founders had roles with slavery, except where they had to hide the roles with it because they were countering it. Because the laws were so crazy that if anyone was found out to be trying to make a unity or an independence, it would be sensed and called out by other people, freaking out because that's how they righteously. Because in other words, those laws were against everyone to an extent that would make any kind of unity or independence that would form itself the complete possession while being self-defended, incapable of defending its self-logic, and of affording proper fact-keeping nature defenses to the real causes of negative value, nature, progression, acts, natures, all locations, areas, and states as criminal insidiousness. The real causes of criminal insidiousness like wrongdoers, with fact-keeping nature, qualities, aspects, and natures. We have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes recorded involved with election crimes because it's relative to their remote possession for themselves that is having been used also by others of town offices, of campuses. See that they have everyone forced to speak through others. The wrong outcome comes. There are only three branches of government. It was like so simple to keep them stick fake suits and ties and counters as an array employed. Functionally the same way they apply arrays and lists with various natures of programs, of programming languages. Hello, Ron Adams. I'm not a doctor. I can delineate their delusions from their criminally foreign influence. Natures and souls, not the real doctors, the ones that are doctors of mental health. For example, I caught them involved with crimes of their patients and criminals and with child offenders, leaders of the kids, uses of the same names involved with uses of religious locations and of interbranch locations where they pretend passions and emotions. They have the comedians pretending passions and emotions, so this can only be heard. You hear them with those narratives regarding sexual preferences of people and how they bring that into equality with equal rights relative to the black. They didn't even fix what black is clear as day, that the Constitution was still criminally foreign influence because roles with that which was entrenched, that was a fear, terror method, torture method, which was to get the torture out. They play these tricks. Like they had roles with the World Trade Center was already involved with investigations and investigators, criminally foreign influence, delusions, raw as certain type of victims. God bless you guys. I know you guys are victims. But in other words, that is relevant to be able to speak to it. In other words, that place is involved with trade negotiations, but like with psychiatry, their drugs. Those people are involved with locations where they've been stacking fake things into databases with their patients and criminals, a whole bunch of other countries, and with the family members of the interbranch doing it. At other locations needed to hide life aggressions. That's shown to them. That's how they use remotely here and there. How they have us share our species volume as a science to sciences and systems tactical terror from how the one is manifest. I tell best Buxies. Okay. Disrupt. Who's snoring in the room? I don't get it. Right. But so, in other words, they have wire crime acts and methods. When we come to where and to how the judicial branch, the executive branch, and the political branch have crime methods individually grouped and together applied, where how they are that certain type of victim predator slash victim hyper predator involved with the answer of what caused slavery and what maintained it. Had nothing to do with number. They use all the truths involved with it for lies. The only reason it had to do with money because they controlled all the money. The breaching method forced the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And that was increasingly and is still increasingly value to our questions, to our perception, to our arrangement, like American history. So they have American history told through the experts using, they can find the littlest fact to know more than someone. Get over on them. You don't know who such and such was, the civil rights leader, or what civil leader what? Was somewhere at last. We still haven't gotten past at last. We haven't gotten free at last. And we haven't, part of the reason we haven't too, because we blamed other people, other things, and ourselves for really why countries A through Z are the same thing. Same rat trap, criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, qualities, aspect, nature, short words, only heard since you guys were little. Humanity, wake. CT must break. CT must be the cherry tree. It's not oak nor peach. Eric Kress is to blame for the. Who's Eric Kress? Ron. The gas prices, all value treatments, are the complete possession of a breaching method. It employed all natures of wealth, incapable of defending themselves and of affording counters to all locations, areas, and states' collusions with as criminally foreign influenced qualities and aspects of fact, human nature, time. It maintained not only illusions being demonstrated by nature. In other words, negative value nature progressions, rather. Acts and natures. It maintained that specifically to have people need to respond to it, specifically knowing it had separated and sustained separation from the integrity of sophistication of the sciences unabridged, which they became tactically abridged in semi-ancient times. This is what nature demonstrates is more probable and is more practical to convict. And where other is pretended, more probable and practical to convict, it is also inherent, active, and increasingly, and as nature in demonstration of the same thing, with its fact, human nature, quality, aspect, and image. So that logic, they're forcing fake sides of issues. Or you agree with people, or you don't, on what premise, and premises, and regarding, what relativity of exceptions and exception nature involved. You see what I'm saying? So the human volume science. Who is Eric Kress? Ron Adams. So Bill Maher, understand this. Because they have people stand up. In other words, if you, WFSB with CBS, they attach me to fake words, fake locations, fake communications with their reporters, retired and standing into branch. involved with fabricating lipoaggressions, and because they were in the background with their kids and families in a whole bunch of other countries since they were, since they were kids, and it was being done to them. In other words, we don't have integrity of evidence reception. We don't have integrity of data reception, of facts reception. And then it's pretended personal. And everyone's pretending motivations that are not honest. Even when they're honest, they're leaving out what is hyper additional to and using that. So there are proofs that, in other words, they have employments of people who are with passions regarding their belief that there is no God, and people with God that are fake when it comes down to it. When you ask them if they're going to follow mandated law. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin's one of the ones involved on and off Fox Connecticut News, on and off WFSB, on and off other Wethersfield Police Department, with names directly and indirectly involved with predicate acts with him and with child offenders of various natures before they got caught in sins, and with interbranch cliques with doctors, foreign and domestic, also involved with uses of corners of buildings and on streets, and of people that don't never even communicated in backgrounds. Planting fake motivations for a method that makes it where they lock the police forms, leaving out exceptions and exception nature. It has roles with a whole bunch of methods and natures of worse than just organized crime relative to the reported 30 shootings in Hartford, Connecticut this year already. There are only about 300 streets in Hartford. And so there are individuals with relativity to more than 300 instances against the people of Hartford, Connecticut, and their interbranch families. There's a certain type of victim that forgiveness is for example. So, and from their perspective, forgiveness, because there's a breaching method involved here. Those aren't just, they've been blaming on mental problems with those people and drugging them and charging them for it. The kids that they've been putting in jail. Don't forget those numbers of kids. That counts as towards the street. More rat traps are upon the people of every city and town than there are streets in our towns and cities. Don't forget this rat trap that wanted to be called a rat trap because it makes them look like they're telling the truth on someone else. In other words, we need names to call this thing. We need, even President Trump said, I said that before too. What is it called? BS. We need something better than that swear word. In other words, these are also people at locations affecting instances where when people speak about emotions and passions, they are never going to afford their conjunction to the simultaneous, to be examined. So we have courts in interbranch, for example. That's just one of the victim ways they are manifest. Victim predators and ways we could discern. See, people blame names and say, oh, hurt this person, put that person in jail. They left out how the jails were involved and are revolved as actually recorded since before they're, and with the spots on off the state judicial branch offices, spots next to it, recorded having been involved with communication, with names involved with communications with my teachers that are involved with predicate acts into databases, influenced as victims from off campus, even the FBI director and federal criminal co-defendants of his. Since before that, they were proven federal criminals from other cases. And then there were federal criminal co-defendants of his in a case that was ongoing at the time of my father's death, which is also the people with the names. That's how I found out it was tied to they were doing this against me because of the roles to get him. And on off the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center right before the attack. You guys have a lot of nerve to pretend passions and emotions when people speak about a child abuses and actual specific acts and names, and you jump in with people you don't even know, and you jump in to defend industries. These industries are punk nothing worse than, these are bad, 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 fake identities of integrity that become increasingly valuable to questions and to answers regarding what caused slavery, regarding what got away with blaming on other things, others, ourselves, screening what really used and uses that, screening from our discernment how space means come out of nowhere. It means, in other words, wealth never afforded, overcoming suburbs tactically denatured since before cars, before our founders were even born. Come on, there's no wealth. We have a bunch of fakes that can only call themselves wealthy through comparison and forcing, that's what Donald Trump's trying to say. They call themselves elites. These are the nameless and or the people pretending passions and emotions that can't defend that and afford discernment of their exploitation of exceptions and of exception nature, which is also relevant to how criminal insidiousness is manifest, and here where we must be. Where the prosecutors have been criminal with their prosecutions, and the judges have been criminal with their judgments, with treatments of statutes and precedents criminally foreign influence simultaneously, with their readings of them as relevant through their uses of social media as a phrase, and as it is actually manifest, involved with the relevant crime methods of preventing people a response in writing too, and timely. And time is important too. I asked you guys since before the World Trade Center attack for a response. You guys got some name switching, forging punks with the interbranch I caught at locations. Your family members and your intimate ties and your patients and criminals. I discern too. Not even if you mixed in, the right to lie with their narratives like that. And the name switching interbranch at formal locations and with the Amy or Emily involved with the Hartford courts. Involved, for example, criminally in West Hartford locations with investigators recorded used remotely, criminally foreign influence. A whole bunch of names associated with the West Farms Mall, the Buckland Hills Mall. Our names involved with criminally foreign influence uses of shopping centers and big box stores like along roads and routes. This is where and how the complete possession of the sense and sensibilities of people becomes and stays our subject, because we're going to have slavery treated with honestly, and we're going to use as evidence too how the lawyers had roles, fake sides, even real sides where they're countering each other, where those arrays were applied and are applied. These are people involved with the databases crime method since before computers that made everyone rolls with it. And it's been so long because it made all rolls with it by making self-valued rolls with it to exploit that, increasingly exploiting all names at the locations. Motivations is also increasingly relative to it because it needs to hide its own, where our answers and our nature has means to answer things, which brings up the breaching methods, roles with people's motivation for roles with slavery. In other words, I couldn't get in other words, they even have, overt hate groups. Those are the ones they let speak, or they block them off. And while they're doing it, they're defending logic that is in collusion with them, saying exactly what's needed and timed to keep exploited, where and how our founders wanted nothing to do with slavery, for example. And where and how they had to counter-extort the other founders is relevant, especially to where and to how George Washington had to come counter-extort the people in Wethersfield with the slavery in Wethersfield and the rolls and the witch trials rolls and nature's only allowed to be manifest, slaves, regardless, and employed effectively, then pretending they're not slaves because other people are slaves worse. They're hiding how sickly non-distinctly by using with how sickly non-distinctly. The breaching method set it up that way. It's still effective. Follow mandated law, please. WFSB, do what's right. Fix the fake conversations with me. Report on that to the teacher. There are more interbranch family members involved with this. Do what's right and respond here or on paper. And stop pretending that you guys want privacy, because you're doing that sequence shift. You're making you're getting pulled into perjury traps, and then you're pretending other people are liars. You don't even know the other people. You got a bunch of little fake punks with two setting up quick fake exceptions, two class placements with me, involved with interbranch family members planting evidences, federal evidences, crimes, and other. Get them onto paper and make sure that the fire department names too. Get me a response too. Don't pretend you know me in the background. Pretend to pass the motion too, because I got the courts with you that are personally involved with you, and the spots next to you. So we're gonna get them on paper. Make sure. Bill Maher, repent. Excuse me. I mean, all of you.